Hey folks, before we get started today, just a quick reminder that The Unready Room, our Friday night live show, is back, where Brandy and I talk about a new episode of Star Trek. Now that Lower Decks is airing regular episodes, we are here every Friday talking about the newest episode of the show to drop. So please join us Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. When we go live, it's a pretty casual conversation. We like to involve the audience comments and stuff too, so it's always great when lots of people show up, and we hope to see you there. This week, we are discussing episode 3 of season 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks, Temporal Edict. So, as usual, the first part of this review will be spoiler-free, and then I'll give you a warning and I'll get into the spoilers a little later. So, to start out with, I do want to say this is a bit of a drop, I think, in quality from the first 2 episodes. Not a huge one. I still really enjoyed this. This was definitely one, though, that when I watched it the first time myself, usually that's when I go and make my video, fresh off of that. But I kind of wanted to sit with this one for a little bit and think about it. And then later, of course, I watched it with my wife, Nikki, and that gave me a bit of a different perspective on it. And that allowed me to kind of compile enough thoughts to put together this review. I guess the reason I wouldn't rate it as high as the first 2 episodes is I feel like a bit of the humor dropped off a bit for me. And again, that's very subjective. But, you know, the second viewing kind of made me realize that I'm caring more about the characters now than I was about the humor. So, you know, in that way, it's kind of, you know, for those of you who have watched The Orville, you know, at the start, it seemed mostly like, you know, dick and fart jokes, right? But then later on, it kind of morphed into more of a traditional type Star Trek like show where, you know, the characters are important and the stories are more important. Now, this is me having only watched the first season of The Orville. Keep in mind, I haven't watched season 2, but that's kind of the impression I got as that season went on. That's kind of how I feel that the trajectory that Lower Decks might take, where, you know, we have all of the fast and hard-hitting jokes to start with, but as we go on, the characters and the stories will begin to be more important to the overall feeling of the show. That's not to say there weren't jokes, and there were funny jokes in this one too. I do enjoy the humor generally. Something felt a little bit off about this episode as compared to the first 2 episodes. But again, after rewatching it and really kind of thinking about what it was that wasn't working for me, I think it was that kind of change of expectations about the show. I hope this all doesn't come across as too negative, because like I said, I did enjoy the show. It's just that of the first 3, I would rank it at the bottom so far. So again, like in the first one, we have the teaser that has nothing really to do with the rest of the episode. Again, a funny little sequence. I enjoyed it. And the rest of the episode really kind of changed things up from what we've seen in the previous 2 episodes, which might again have contributed to my kind of feeling like, oh, this is a bit of a step outside the norm for this show. But I have to also remember we're only 3 episodes in. There's not a real norm established for this show yet. You know, I was talking with someone online, and I was saying that if this were 1987 and this was Star Trek The Next Generation we were watching for the first time, we just got to Code of Honor. So, you know, let's give this show a chance. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the characters. I like in this one that we get to see a bit more of the bridge crew, a couple of them in particular. You know, and I'll get more into that on the other side of the spoiler warning. But yeah, suffice it to say, I enjoyed this one. I think it's good. I think it's a nice continuation of things we've seen. But, you know, it just doesn't quite reach the level of episode 1 and especially episode 2 for me. So yeah, definitely worth watching as far as, you know, it just being the 3rd episode. I think there's a lot more really interesting stuff to come. This one maybe just missed the mark just a little bit for me, but I'm still really enjoying the show. Okay, so here's the warning for spoilers. Past this point, I will be talking about the plot of the show, so please be warned. If you don't want spoilers, I'd suggest stopping here. If you've seen the episode, no worries, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I like I said, I generally enjoyed this episode. I love that in a change from what we've gotten in the previous episodes, we kind of see a splitting off of Mariner and Boimler into different parts of the story, which I think was kind of important and lets both of their characters kind of do some things on their own apart from each other. Boimler, his kind of dynamic, I feel, is definitely an inversion of the Boimler we've seen in the first two episodes. So both episode 1 and 2, I'd say, Boimler is consistently having a bad time. He's not having a good time of it. And then at the end, there's just a little bit of redemption. In episode 1, it's the pink goo ends up being what saves the ship, even though he's not really credited with that. But he does get that kind of nice moment with the captain where he makes her remember his name and stuff. In the second episode, of course, he's very disillusioned with Starfleet and wants to quit. And Mariner kind of buoys his ego and helps him realize that he is important and needed in Starfleet. In this one, the episode mostly is actually Boimler riding high. The captain institutes this directive that says there can be no downtime. We need to get all of our work done in a prescribed amount of time and then immediately move on to the next task with no time for what they're calling buffer time in the episode. And Boimler's in his element. He loves it. This is where he thrives. He's getting all of his tasks done and even requesting more work when that work is finished. So, he's really in his element here. He's riding high. And then at the end, when the captain realizes, thanks to Boimler, that what is needed is for the crew to have that kind of downtime to be able to work efficiently. That gets named the Boimler effect, much to Boimler's chagrin. So he's kind of knocked down a bit of a peg at the end of the episode. So it's kind of an inversion of how his story's been so far. But I do have to say it was really interesting to see him operating separate from Mariner and kind of being able to rise to the challenge on his own. And he really does save the situation at the end when he makes the captain realize where she has gone wrong in how she's allocated the officer's time and that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of interesting themes going on in this episode. I think there's you could read it from a perspective of like a working class, upper class struggle a little bit. I think there's just a little bit of that there. But there's also, this idea of people needing downtime, people needing to have time to, get their work done, but at the same time slack off just a little bit. No human is going to, well, except Boimler, is going to be able to, work completely steadily without any kind of downtime. There has to be those moments that make life worth living, rather than it just being work, work, work all the time with no end in sight. So, I think that was an interesting thing there. We also get the Mariner and Commander Ransom story on the planet. And I thought this was really interesting because we get to see a lot more of Commander Ransom than we've seen before. And I really love Jerry O'Connell in this character. He's kind of a bit of a mashup between Kirk and Riker. He strikes the Riker pose a number of times. He rips his shirt off in fight like Kirk, and even has like the Starfleet approved double-handed interlocked fists clubbing thing that is completely ridiculous for any sort of actual fighting move, but seems to be what they teach at Starfleet Academy. And, I think maybe he's been studying his copy of Dayton Ward's Kirk Fu manual. So, using the tried and true Starfleet double fist method, which that's ridiculous. But anyway, lots of nice little in-jokes in this episode. And I think this episode is a little bit more accessible, maybe, than previous episodes. To kind of get my thoughts in order, I did watch some other people's reviews of this episode before filming this. One in particular, Jesse Gender, great review and made me realize some things that I hadn't thought of. And one of them is that, a lot of the humor in the first couple of episodes was very inside baseball for Star Trek fans. A lot of really in-jokes that only Star Trek fans will get. This one seems a little bit more accessible by maybe a general audience. So it has that going for it as well. So yeah, I think definitely all around a pretty good episode. Not my favorite of the three, but they can't all be on the level of what I think last week's Envoys was. So I do want to hear what you all think. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode, Temporal Edict. Do you agree with me that it's not quite the best, or did you really enjoy it? Did you hate it? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks of course, as always, needs to be given to the Patreon supporters. I really do appreciate everything you do for this channel. And also a reminder that new Patreon supporters are added at the start of each month. So anybody who's added a pledge in the month of August, September 1st, you will see your name appear at the end of this video if you've pledged $5 or more. So thank you so much to the new Patreons. I'm really looking forward to adding you guys. And to everyone else, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing if you thought this video was worth it, and even just for watching. And, you know, I really want you to share these with people who have a positive outlook on Star Trek and who are looking for videos on YouTube that aren't just bashing things, aren't just trying to make a few bucks by being really negative all the time about everything. So, you know, I'm not naming any names, but you know which people I'm talking about. So thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for supporting Star Trek and enjoying this thing that we all love. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.